Good afternoon, everybody. I am Annie Phenix. I'm here with two of my favorite guests, are both authors of these wonderful books, two of my favorite books. I'm the author of this new book, which is really coming out this year. And we're going to talk books today, how the idea came about for these authors, and then the route that they chose, because we all have kind of different routes, and it can be very confusing if you're thinking about writing a book. And I just read a statistic that 88% of all Americans want to write a book because people think it's easy. And how many years have we all been involved in just this one project? It's not easy, but it's worth doing if you feel passionate about something. So I'm Annie Phenix. I'm a certified behaviorist through Into Dogs, fear-free professional, family dog mediator, and author of The Midnight Dog Walkers, in the second book coming out this July. So Lisa, tell us, everybody probably knows everybody, but just go ahead and give a brief intro about you, just in case.
Thanks, Annie. Lisa Wagoner. My husband and I both run Cold Nose College. I'm a certified professional dog trainer, a certified separation anxiety trainer, and I'm on faculty for the Victoria Stilwell Academy of Dog Training and Behavior. We specialize now, we've moved more from working with clients to working with aspiring dog trainers. So we provide coaching and mentoring for aspiring dog trainers, behavior case support for professional trainers, and love what we do.
Awesome.
And I'm the author of the original Rocket Recall, Teach Your Dog to Come, a labor of love.
What about you, Kathy?
I'm Kathy Callahan, and I am a certified professional dog trainer and family dog mediator also. I have been fostering rescue dogs, typically puppies, for a decade, and that's what I ended up writing this book about. But I'm also I have my own company. It's called Pup Start. And so I do private training around here. I do specialize in puppyhood. That's my favorite, but I do work with a bunch of adult dogs as well. And I write for Whole Dog Journal, which is so much fun because I grew up, in terms of my being a dog owner, reading Whole Dog Journal forever. And then now I get to write for them, which is really fun.
It's the gold standard for the dog world. And I have a new course on my website about how to choose traditional publishing. And we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. I will go back through when we're done and link, including a lot of special discounts. And I have a new course, choosing traditionally published, which my book is, or self-published, because there's definitely pros and cons. And one of the things I scream about in my course is have a professional looking cover, no matter what. Like, I wouldn't be able to tell either one of these wasn't traditionally published. And usually as a former publicist, I can smell a self-published book. So this well done on this, because
Thank you.
It's professionally done. And this costs some money. It's not free because you have to get a designer to do this. And my publisher did this cover. I did have some input into it, and I ended up being happy with it. So Lisa went the route of self-published, and Kathy has a traditional publisher. And we're just going to kind of go round robin and start with Lisa and talk us through about how we know how you got the idea because you guys are the recall king and queen of the dog world, but how you chose the self-publishing route.
Great. Well, we had the protocol with recall, the training protocol with recall. So we were sort of known for that because of our Tozzer DVD that we did 2012, I think. But I always wanted to put that into a book format. Didn't, too busy, I want to, didn't have the time to do it because I was training so much. Life changed, my focus changed. I started for a while doing only separation anxiety training. And then my girl Willow died, my 6-year-old heart dog Willow. A couple years went by, a new dog came into my life, Kaylee, and my heart was sad because I hadn't written anything about Willow. So I started writing a memoir about my dog years and how my life has been dramatically changed by the lives and deaths of my dogs. And I was 70,000 words into that work when it became too emotional to write. You really dig deep into some emotions in describing the deaths of dogs. So I set that aside and thought, I'll just write a training book. I've always wanted to write Rocket Recall. I enrolled in Eileen Anderson's IAABC writing mentorship and started working on the book in that mentorship. Her mentorship is excellent whether you want to write blog posts or creative articles for yourself, essays. It's a wonderful course. So I got a good bit of that done. Oh, let me say, rewind. Prior to that, I actually approached Dogwise about Rocket Recall, a book. They asked me to do a proposal. I put together a lot of information for the proposal, sent it to them, and I never heard anything from them. So I said, I'll write my own book. So that was really the catalyst.
And Dogwise, for people who may not know, they publish positive reinforcement videos, and but that's all they do is focusing on the dog world. And I cannot stand writing a book proposal, which I had to do for my publisher. They're intense.
It's intensive. There's a lot of work into
Nobody likes it. It's 30 or 40 pages. You have to prove to your publisher that you are going to make them money because you have a platform and you have to compare your book, and it's tons of research. I will rather write a book, 100,000 word book, than write a book.
Totally.
But go ahead.
Yeah,
That is
absolutely.
That's the first step.
So that really was the catalyst. I didn't hear back from Dogwise, so I thought I'll write my own book. So it ensued. I guess it didn't take me long. If you think about writing books, it's my first book, so I have nothing to compare it to. But it took me 9 months from start to publication. And
Wow.
as Annie mentioned already, there is a ton of work involved if you're going to self-publish, and I think do it right. So yes, I knew I needed professional cover. So I had to go out and find all the individual parts to put the book together. I wrote it. I had the words on the paper, but I needed a professional editor. I needed a professional interior designer.
An illustrator.
I needed a professional illustrator.
Denise O'More.
And I needed someone to have the big picture look at it. So I found those people, engaged those people professionally, nurtured, we were collaborating.
Individually, you found them individually. They were not.
Yeah, I found them individually.
You reached out.
So I reached out. Yeah. So I didn't know what I didn't know, but I used to be an executive search consultant and I loved researching. So I just started, pulling the threads of who does what. Ask on Facebook about illustrators, got a list this long. Thankfully, Denise O'More was one of those names. Interviewed them all, looked at samples of their work. Then it came to an interior designer. I was going to do the work. I learned that there was a program I could use to format the interior design myself. I bought it. When it came time to do it, it's like, I don't want to learn this. I just don't want to learn this program. So I started looking for somebody to do that work. Started reaching out to clients and people who I knew were kind of in that area, design, not necessarily book design, but I had a former separation anxiety client who is a branding expert and does a lot of logo design. And I messaged her and she said, oh my gosh, my husband, who I knew because of the work together, she said, he was in book publishing for years. He did interior design. Bingo. So that was done. And then it's just putting the pieces together and managing the timing of the project. The timeline is always a little longer than you think it's going to be. But still, I was really pleased that, we were able to pull it together in 9 months. I have the hard copy printouts of every
Revision.
Every manuscript. When I edited it, soft copy edited, I would print it out and then edit it, the hard copy. And they stand about, I can't bear to throw them away. They're nothing now, but that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
You hired an editor as well?
I did. I hired an editor. Eileen Anderson was my editor. She's just amazing to work with.
Yeah, I had her look over my manuscript for the Midnight Dog Walkers many years ago.
Yeah. And her, her dog training expertise as well, her knowledge of dog training is so valuable to make sure that was clear with some of the learning theory and things that I say, but is that going to be appropriate for another reader? And so it was wonderful to collaborate with her on the editing process.
It's almost like you have to be well, you are an entrepreneur when you self-publish, because you have to figure out all those pieces, and so much, which we'll talk about in a second, that the publisher does for us. There are cons to some of that, like my book being a year delayed that I have no control over. You control the timing, you control the price, you control the interior design, but you're also responsible for any of it and all of it. And you have to learn it also. So how did you get it on Amazon? You learned through their self-publishing, and is that where people can-
So I self-published through Amazon. And so that's a whole nother process to create your account and fill out all the information and come up with the keywords and the phrases and the supportive information relative to when you go to Amazon, you see the book, what is it about, the brief, if you will, description of, why should someone want to buy this book? So you have to craft that in a promotional way. Thankfully, again, I had help with some of that. I did a lot of researching other books online, dog training books, what categories they fell in, because you have to pick certain categories when you self-publish. And you hope you get it right. You can go back in and change those things, but it was a learning process to do that. And so then it's live on Amazon. People can purchase it from Amazon. The ebook followed. There's a different formatting for the ebook, and I didn't want to do that. Again, do I have to learn how to do that? So I found a wonderful company in Alpharetta, Georgia, thanks to my local writers group. There's a company in Alpharetta, Georgia called Book Logic, BOOKLOGIX, Book Logics, and they are a la carte publisher. Any author who works with them, even if they do the full publishing piece, the author still owns all their work. They will handle pieces of it, clumps of it, or the whole thing. They did my ebook process for me. So they formatted everything, redid the cover, and made that happen for me at a very reasonable price. And I just had them in the last few weeks. They did the work necessary to tweak the manuscript and tweak the cover to publish through Ingram Spark, which is important if you want local booksellers and libraries to carry your book. So that I hit that button today. Ding, 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 ding.
And you got a discount for the group for Midnight Dog.
And I do, yes. Annie will post it in the group later, but Book Logic is offering a 10% discount or any one of their services for any of you who are not already their clients. I have one book in process, another that's that idea that I'm planning to do. I already have the title for it. But I'm 99.9% sure I'll probably work with them, or at least definitely see how they can help me with my next 2 pieces of work.
Awesome. Debbie Sheridan asked, what category did you pick for your book? Because my publisher, for some reason, has mine in dog health care and something else bizarre, which I can't change.
Debbie, I wish I could tell you. I would have to go back and look, I swear. I really think it's under dog training.
Yeah. Probably so.
But I think the dog training might be a category under animals or pets. Again, it's that thing you do one time and then it's done and you never think about it again. I wish I could tell you, but I can't. Sorry.
It's just a huge learning curve. And one person said they can't hear us, but I think everyone else can. So I'm hoping that's not a global problem. But let me know if you guys can't hear us, because we can hear each other.
Can't hear us. I think you're still here.
Having a great conversation among ourselves, but it seems by the comments that people can hear. So just let me know if you can't.
The other piece that comes after publishing that I think Annie and Kathy, you're probably also doing, even though you're traditionally published, is the promotion is all for me. I'm it. And quite frankly, and Annie's seen my publicity or marketing spreadsheet. I have to be honest, I've barely tipped the scale on that spreadsheet. I wasn't motivated because of Kaylee's death. My dog in the book, Kaylee, many of you know that she passed 2 weeks after my book was published. And it was just a cruel event that happened. Such joy with finally getting this book published, and then such, devastation with losing her. I'm really just now feeling like, okay, I can go out and promote this book now. Thankfully, with all of you there who have known me, it's been quite successful so far, even without my
bestseller list many times, and that is so hard to do on Amazon. That is millions of books are published, self-published and traditionally published on Amazon. So that's really, really, really hard to do.
Yeah, thanks. I'm told that the self-published book, no matter the genre, the self-published book is normally sells 250 copies.
Yeah, it does. And actually, even traditional books now are less than 300, unless you're buying your own book. Like, that's how people get on the New York Times bestseller.
Yeah, so, I've had maybe two hands now, maybe 10 days throughout the almost year that I haven't sold a copy. Someone is finding their way to my book. And please, all of you, Annie's book, Kathy's book, my book, matters not if you're traditionally published or not. Please leave a written review on Amazon. Those reviews are what help other people find the book, and they're so important to every single author who has a book on Amazon or anywhere.
It's crucial. And if you look at someone who won't be named, we say he has very shiny teeth and he's on the television. He has 8,000 reviews on most of his books. Well, guess what? You can buy that. And you look at his page, he has a ton of bots that he's just paying for. So that's not, if you're savvy at all, that's not 8,000. And there's certified buyers as well. If you purchase the book, it will say certified buyer. And that's weighs more, I think, with the general public. Yes, reviews are important. I'm on a subversive what's the right word? Subversive journey to get as many positive reinforcement books out there into the world as I possibly can.
Right. Your course is going to help everyone, Annie, that's just fabulous that you've done that. And then also, I know you'll mention it, your chat coming up next week. I'm really interested in her work and her membership group.
That's Marika Flatt, who's, I think, the best publicist I've ever known. I owned a literary publicity firm for 10 years in Austin, Texas, and Marika and I worked side by side, and she went on after I sold my company to have her own company called PR by the Book, and she has a different one called Author to Influencer, and she'll be here next, I believe, Tuesday. So one quick thing more about self-published is generally with traditionally published, you have a timeline of the amount of energy and printing, press and distribution and marketing that your traditionally published publisher is going to invest in your book. So if you don't sell enough books, generally speaking, depending on your publisher, within 3 months, you're done. Unless you get maybe a paperback a year later, if you're big enough. Most of us don't. These are all paperbacks. So that's one thing about self-publishing is you can sell that book on your website and your classes on Amazon for the rest of the book's life. Like Midnight Dogwalkers is gone. You can no longer get my first book, which had a kind of a cult following, and I can't control that. I tried to buy it back from them, and that was going to be illegal. And I like my publisher; we get along, but they decided to not print it, even though it was still selling. And I think that was a big mistake. But it wasn't selling as much as their front-listed books or their new books. So that's one thing about self-publishing, and I talk about that in my course. You have the ultimate control. We've lost even copyright control. So that's something to consider.
It's don't let me kid you. It was a lot of work and it was quite expensive. It was very expensive. Right. I wondered, like, multiple thousands of dollars, folks. So multiple. Okay. And I wondered, there was a point at which it still needed to be professional. It needed to look the way I want it to look, but it was going to be X more dollars. And I was, woe is me. I thought, you know what? I'm in it already. I may not recover my costs, but I want to help other people learn that there's a different way to train recall without shocking their dog. So if I take it on the chin with not being able to recoup my costs, that's okay, because the information is out there and hopefully people will find their way to it.
It's a labor of love. None of us is getting rich.
No, that's a really important thing for everyone to understand. I mean, I guess somebody might might just be hit by a meteor and their book will. But both basically the joy in this is that
You're doing.
you are holding it in your hands and you're hoping that your message reaches some folks.
Yeah.
And that is a beautiful thing. And it is really exciting. But if your idea was this is going to be a bestseller and it's going to send your kid to college, something else.
I was just at a writers conference this last weekend, and that's always a question, that people asked of the speakers there who have multiple books, like, don't plan to quit your day job.
No. And
No.
it's either, I tell my client when I was a publicist, it's either an extended business card that explains
Yes.
what business is about, or
Yes.
period, a labor of love, which
Yeah.
go to Kathy's book,
Yes.
it's very much a labor of love because it's all about rescues. This has
Yeah.
5-star reviews, by the way. I think Lisa and I are, I don't know, last I checked, I'm like 4.5, but this is
I
all,
think mine's 4.5 too.
which is still phenomenal.
It's still great.
We'll take it.
Leave a review, you guys. Leave reviews for Annie. Leave reviews for me. Maybe we'll hit the 5 stars.
Yes.
I don't know. I haven't looked. Somebody go look for us and tell us where we
I
are.
think we have the haters who are like, you have to have the shock collar. We're
So-
controversial by saying love your dog.
Correct.
But let's talk about your journey and how
Correct.
this came about.
All right. So I was actually kind of a writer before I was a dog trainer. I was an English major in college and I was in magazine publishing long ago when I was, corporate. And so I did have that kind of writing background, and then started doing the fostering. So we bring in these my kids were maybe 12 and 15 when we started doing this. And so our family, we were dog people anyway. And we just started, you know what actually happened? We had a dog die too. That was the beginning of our fostering, is that Zoe died too early and it was sad and we needed to feel better. And somebody said, and we just weren't ready to bring somebody new into the pack. And so somebody suggested fostering. And we're like, we could do that. But we were worried, of like any dog lover is, that we wouldn't be able to let them go. And so I asked the coordinator to give us dogs we wouldn't like, because we were big dog people. So they gave us these 2 little sort of French bulldoggy kind of dogs. We loved them. And so that just started the journey. We're now at a decade later, we have fostered currently numbers like 220 to 230 are downstairs right now. It's a mama who gave birth here and her 8 puppies, and they are now 5 weeks. So that's what we do. And what happened is I started posting on social media. I had to learn Facebook and stuff because I wanted to get them good homes. And so I started posting this stuff. And of course, it's just kind of a fun story. Everybody likes the rags to riches story about puppies who are on the edge and then get safe and then get a home. Like that's just, that story arc hits all of us and we like to watch it. And what I noticed is I was originally posting just to get homes. Then I realized I was posting because I was getting all these messages. People are like, oh, I just go to your page when I'm feeling sad. And I realized there's a thing here. Like it makes people feel good. And it's an amazing thing to be able to share. And the other thing is the stuff was so good that was happening in our house, so good that I just really did want to share it. I just wanted to share that stuff. So I started posting that. Then separately, a friend of mine from our little PTA group from elementary school, a friend started a writers group, and she reached out to like 8 of us. And she was like, hey, don't you write something? And, we all kind of had written in our previous lives. So we are still together. That group, you guys get together with some women. So I can't even tell you what we've done for each other. So we started meeting once a month. And we had some rules in the beginning. They're relaxed now. But in the beginning, we had some good rules about, it's a fragile thing to share your writing with people. And so there were some rules to support our fragile little egos, so that as you went around, you always had to submit something. And then we would spend a certain amount of time talking about everybody's. And the rules were kind of like, you had to say one thing you liked, one thing that was maybe confusing to you, and one thing you learned or something. I can't really remember anymore what the rules were, but it was to make sure. And we also weren't allowed to give suggestions, like you should say it like this. It was more like I was unclear what this was about. Anyway, so I would not have written this book if it weren't for the deadlines that came with the monthly meetings of that writing group. So otherwise, I just didn't think anyone cared enough. The Facebook stuff did tell me people do care a little, but then the writing group, these guys were like, no, 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 we want more. And so I was writing these little things, and a picture and a little thing. They're like, no, 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 but didn't you say that the mom came from? I was like, yeah, do you want to hear that? They're like, we do.
And Lee,
So
didn't you start with a writers group? And didn't yours come out of a writers group too?
Mine.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could say it did, because it started in my mentorship. So that was in essence a writers group. And I belong to 2 different writers group now, Kathy. One is just for women. It's a closed group. 4 of us, we meet once a week and we're there for 2 hours. We write for an hour. And then we actually write together, and then we can share if we want. But yeah, it's sharing is, you have to learn to share and put your work out there and read it. I did that at a writer's workshop this week, and like people I didn't know I'm sharing with, it was gulp.
But it gets so much better.
It
so much better. And it doesn't mean that you have to take everything they say, because they don't know everything about your audience and about blah, blah, blah. But boy, that feedback makes everything better in the end. Everything is clearer. Every now and then you do lose your little darlings, but it does make it much better. So anyway, I feel like by the time, so that it took me probably a year and a half of that. By the time I basically had 13 chapters. So this book is about kind of the 13 most funniest, cutest, most moving foster experiences that we had. So each chapter is kind of a different group of puppies or a different puppy or whatever. So I had that. And then what do I do with it? Because I am a no one. The truth is, it is a miracle that this book got published at all, because I was not writing for Whole Dog Journal back then. I didn't have quite yet a booming dog training business and stuff. I truly was just, someone with a book, just like the 81,000 people or whatever who think that they want to write a book. So I researched and came up with, oh yeah, you got to do that book proposal thing. So I studied and studied online how you're supposed to write a good book proposal. I did have 2 friends who had done that, so they showed me theirs. I was like, oh, that's a drag. Okay, so I did the work of the proposal, which is a pain. So you're looking around and so just like you said, publishers want to see that they're going to make money on your book. And the only way that's what they want to see. And the only way you can do that is to be really specific about what your book is going to offer. How is that like all those great bestsellers? How is it a little bit different? How are you offering your own special thing? What distinguishes your book from the other things in this very crowded field if you're writing about dogs? So you have to do all that stuff, and it has to be grabby, and it has to all the stuff. So I did that, and then I got an agent, which still to this day, the fact that I can say the sentence "my agent" is just the most. I will go to my grave. That is going to be one of the happiest things in my life. I don't know how that happened. I went to
on your tombstone. She had an agent.
She had an agent. So I went to so I did do a lot of reaching out to people I kind of knew, like, hey, which I do. Do you know anyone? Somebody told me to go to Publishers Marketplace, which is you pay like $20 a month and get on Publishers Marketplace, and it allows you to look and see who's publishing stuff. You can see who the agents are, who the publishers are, and all that kind of stuff. So I went on there and sent things to a lot of people. And so I sent the proposal to a lot of people. And I think there were some sample chapters in there. I can't really remember anymore. And actually heard back from a lot of people. I expected to hear 0. But people would nicely write back and say, nope. But they would write back and just say, it's too bad. We have a competing thing right now, whatever. Their nice way of brushing off. Then this woman wrote back and was like, this is charming. But she was in Europe for 2 months or something. She's like, oh, this is charming. Let's talk when I get back. And then I heard nothing. I was like, did I make that up? And I would go back and look at that email. No, it did exist. She came back and she's like, I absolutely want to represent you. So she's a delight. She's a real New York agent. She's been doing this forever. And so she helped me. She's like, no, this proposal, the reason you got me is that this proposal is almost done. So then her
2 things really quick. It's very hard to cold call agents, even though they all say, this is what I'm looking for. I'm desperate for my kind, whatever, dog puppy books. But there, I worked with agents as a publicist, and I say their favorite word is no, followed by hell no, or nothing. You hear nothing.
Right.
So to get an agent, your proposal had to be very, very well done. And also, I don't think people realize, generally speaking, with nonfiction books, your book needs to be finished. It's not an idea of a book. Fiction books, you
Yeah.
can have a better shot of saying, I've written, and here's
Yep.
my sample chapter. So the whole book has to be done. Then
Yeah.
the excellent proposal and an excellent query letter, because the query letter has to pique them to read. And I will say, as a publicist, I couldn't read fiction for years, because this is back in the 2000s. I read so much bad fiction from, because everyone thinks they can write, just like everyone thinks they're a dog trainer, right? Because there's no regulations.
Yes. Yes.
I couldn't read fiction for years, and I've only just now, because there's so much bad stuff. And this is what agents have to, they have to pull, reading constantly, or their interns are reading constantly.
Right.
So to rise through that crap.
Right.
that's
Right.
a good job with that.
It's just insane that happened. I still don't understand how that happened. Anyway, it made all the difference. So Joan then went through and helped me tweak that proposal. And then she took it to various houses. It still took a good 6 months before we found the publisher that,
Someone bit before she sold it.
yeah. And so that whole process, I think I started writing January 2016, got the publisher, finished in 18 months, probably, got the agent in another few months, and then it still took another year or whatever to really have a deal. And then they wanted to delay publishing because they wanted it as a gift, because it's a good gift book. It really is a good gift book. Like, it's a great, give it to your kid's piano teacher, give it to your sister-in-law. It's a great little make you feel better, feel happy about the world thing. So we delayed it to go.
That's a great, speaking of keywords,
Right.
that is a key word somewhere in my gift, because it can be a good gift.
It can
So
be a good
yeah,
gift.
just thinking, back to keyword.
Beautiful photos.
Oh, great
So that was-
photos in it.
Yeah.
Such great photos.
I mean, you can't miss, like, it's beautiful puppies in my house. So we delayed, tragically. Then there was a pandemic. Don't know if you remember that, but so that meant that it came out it was September 2020, and nobody was ever in a bookstore in September 2020, and everything was weird, and the election was coming up, and there was a lot. It was just so. We had high hopes, honestly, that it would just magically maybe take off, because it is the kind of thing that, like, it could have. It didn't. It did respectably. It did just fine. And I'm this week signing a deal with my second book, which is it's a puppy guide. So that one is very different.
Oh, great.
That's a gifty book. Here's how you use empathy to raise your dog the right way. So it's going to be, I love it. It makes me happy. It's almost done. And so that one will probably be a year from now.
Same publisher or different?
Same publisher.
My publisher, they bought my Midnight Dog Walkers from Dogster, so it's a new publisher, Fox Chapel. They bought, it was in both contracts, my first 3 books. They have the first right of refusal.
Yes, mine do too. And so that's the thing. I had to share it with them first, and then they had a month to come up with an offer, and then I could either take that offer or not. But if I didn't take it, then they wouldn't. If I went and tried to sell it to someone else, they wouldn't. I imagine that offer would be different when I came back to them. So we just took it. And here's the thing, I was delighted with them. Like, I had prepared, as thrilled as I was to get a publisher to say, yes, I want to publish your book, I was terrified that they were going to change it, because I know that book is me. The reason I want it published is if I go to my grave, it's like, no, this is who I was. I wanted it to be like that. And so I was scared that it would just, whatever, they would try to make it more marketing, whatever they did. I don't love the title. The title was, they have a lot of impact on the title. I don't love that title, but hey, whatever. The rest of the book, the meat of it, oh my goodness, they didn't change a thing. Like,
wow, Kathy, that's great. That's unusual.
It was beautiful. There were, every now and then they'd be like, wait, I'm confused. Is the mama dog downstairs? Like, little things like that, but they didn't. No substantive changes, and that was a total delight. So that was very easy, and they, of course, they made it better. They would catch things that's this is a little bit unclear. Awesome, thanks, terrific. And I didn't have to hire them to do that. you know.
Right.
Pictures, and the
And
design
then-
staff.
And then the design, like when the first design, I didn't love it, but I was in magazine publishing and I know how to talk about what wasn't working for me. And I knew how to think about solutions that would work for me. So I was able to be like, could we just do this? And then the next round, I was like, that's my book. That's it. And I love the way it looks. I'm super happy with it. And
Expensive to print that many color photos.
yeah, I can't believe they published that book. I really like it was expensive for them. All those photos they did, I cannot get over it. Anyway, I love it. The whole process was pretty pain-free working with them. Of course, with traditional publishing, I make what 12% or something. It's compared to compared to I'm like, I should have done self-publishing, but I love that I didn't have to do.
Yeah, you didn't have to do all that. It saves, you didn't spend that money.
It was good. But the one part and my agent tells me that this is just how it is. Like, you think that they've got their marketing team working for you. It's just you. Like, it really, I mean, what's true is you're kind of on some lists because of them, and they, you get a little bit more visibility because of them, but truly what they're looking for all of you out there, if you can possibly build your own platform at all a little bit before you try to do this, it's all about platform now. So, your whatever you've got. So Facebook, Instagram, your newsletter, I just started a podcast, that whatever you have that can impress a publisher is going to increase your odds of getting a publisher, because they want to use that, because they want you to do it. They want you to market your own book. Yeah. So what they did was they got me. I was this shiny first-time author, so ready to, be on my book tour, or whatever. And of course there was no anything like that, because it was September 2020. But there was sort of a podcast tour. So they got me signed up on all these podcasts. Like, did anyone listen to any of those little podcasts? I have no idea. Some of them seemed really random. I was on a TV show, on a like Morning America kind of in Portland, Oregon TV show that they got for me that I never would have gotten. Anyway, you have this idea, if you were traditionally published, that there's going to be a big marketing effort behind the book. And it's not. They are saving that money for, they've got their staff, and they're going to put that staff on their big name book. They're going to put that staff on whatever they've decided really is going to be their explosive big seller. And they're going to put all their stuff, and you're just going to get a little bit.
But then you have to not only be the writer. Well, you didn't have to do all the stuff that Lisa did with the production and the getting your own illustrator and the cover art and distribution and figuring out how to put it on Amazon. They take care of distribution, which is huge, and the layout and all that huge. But that is the brutal truth, that there will be very little to no marketing on your book unless you are already someone already famous, you're a movie star. And that's why my publicity firm was so successful. We started in Austin, Texas in 1994, because we would be hired by every kind of author that had either self-published, used to be called vanity publishing.
Oh, I do remember that term. Yes.
Derogatory, or it used to be, and it's no longer, thanks to Amazon. Or traditionally published, and our authors would be so upset. They got the agent, they got through hell, and nothing happened with their book. And then you had 3 months to 90 days, or to 9 months. And if you didn't sell they shred books. They literally shred your book. So that's what we did. And we are going to have Marika Flatt, who's a world-class publicist, next week. And she and I, we're publicists together. And my course that we'll link all of this below, that is available now, and I have a discount for Midnight Dog Walkers, is about half of it's about marketing, because you really, no matter what, self-published or traditional, you have got to market your book. Like if you're lucky, they create a press release for you, and then that's your first step. And it has to be Associated Press format. It has to be a very journalistic style press release. It can't be, this is the best book known to mankind, said the author. It has to be traditionally done. And then your press release is how you start getting media. And then you have to do that. Yeah. Either way.
And it's really hard to get that media, even if you do that right. There's just so much competition for all this stuff. So there's gonna be a lot of no's. There's just gonna be a lot of nothing happening, even if you are really, really trying hard. And I think most of us who write it's maybe not also something we love being out there talking about this stuff. And so it's sometimes a little bit of an uncomfortable thing for writers.
It's really interesting for me, Kathy. It's interesting that you say that. I have loved marketing my business, Culinary College, all these years because I believe in what I do.
Yeah.
But I have been bashful about promoting my book more.
Yes.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just an interesting feeling for me, why is that? And don't people know about it by now? And, making
Right.
assumptions that aren't true.
Yeah.
But you mentioned color photographs in your book. Oh, that was the hardest thing for me to make a decision on in my book. I wanted color photographs desperately, but it was going to raise the price of the book
Yes.
too
Yeah.
much. And I wanted to keep it affordable. So it would be an easy, decision for a pet parent to purchase it, for anyone to purchase it. So I went with black and white, but so the ebook has color, but my illustrator, Denise O'Moore in Ireland, is amazing. And her the color illustrations in that book are fabulous when you see it in the ebook. So it was disappointing to me, but
I know. That's such
they
a
still look
hard
great in grayscale.
And I love the illustrations. So illustrations are so important for a book like yours, because you can't just have the photographs don't show what you're talking about. And an illustration is the way to go, I think, for that.
Well, and so you guys can tell me differently or tell me about traditional publishing. But one of the things I also had to do was send my book out ahead of time, pre-publishing time to advanced readers.
Yeah.
So selecting those advanced readers, gulping when you asked, a colleague or a mentor, an industry leader to say, would you, here's my work. So, but their feedback was really, really, really important. And one of the comments about the sciencey part that hopefully is very understandable, how dogs learn, was, I think you really need some illustrations. I knew that, but I was so ready to birth this book. It's like, how am I going to get the illustrations done? How am I going to capture photos that would portray what I'm saying? And when I received that feedback, it's like, we just have to hold up publishing. It was another 3 months, I think, before all the illustrations were done and ready, but it wouldn't be the book it is today if we didn't have those illustrations and Denise hadn't done them.
And you could do that as a self-publish. You had the ability to put the brakes on. Something kind of similar happened to me, which everyone who's been following my story with my second book knows that there's been a huge delay, up to a year. Like I turned it in January 31st, and it's a big day to turn it in because you feel like you're done, but you're not done. You're done with that part. You're done with the beginning, and should be the hardest part of the writing, but that's the easiest part if you're a writer in some ways. January 31st, 2022.
Yep.
Their pub date was ambitious. It was supposed to be July 4th last year, and then September, and it kept bumping and bumping, and for different reasons. A lot of it was a paper supply out of our control, my control, their control. And Denise in Ireland's like, I'll send you paper. It's just we'll just raise money and get you some paper for this. And that was frustrating. The good thing is that I promoted it for a year.
Right.
Yeah, because people are kind of sick of it. I'm kind of sick of talking about it.
No, people aren't, though. You feel that way. That's the thing. I think you feel that way because you're the one doing it. I think for other people, it's like, oh yeah, like people need a few reminders. Like, oh yeah, that is.
Yeah, that's a really important point to remember. Annie and Kathy wouldn't think anything about me continuing to promote something, and I think nothing about, oh my God, yes, you need this book. If you haven't seen this, you need this.
Right.
And marketing, which we're talking, my course talks about that. Marika Flatt will be here next week, and I adore her. That's why we're talking about her so much. Seriously, the best publicist I've ever known, and I've known a lot of them. Marketing messages have to get in front of your buyer 7 to 8 times before it clicks. So you could have the best book in the whole world that's exactly right. for that reader, but if they don't see it in their social media or wherever people are getting it's beyond social media, there's newspapers, there's radios, there's podcasts, there's blogs.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get anybody to buy anything at this point, other than having something like the Midnight Dog Walkers, which has been around since 2016. So people that are in this little community help support, and that's one thing I love about it, is that they're very supportive of all the positive reinforcement stuff that we do. So I love that. I'm going to talk just really quickly about my book because it is in the course of my journey.
Great, Annie.
But just really fast, this is my first book, as we know, Midnight Dog, and this what the group's named after. This was very kind of untraditional and unsuspected path because I was a writer for Dogster.com and Dogster Magazine, which was a very young, very well-funded company from California of youngsters, I would say, 40-year-olds, because I'm almost 60. And their magazine is beautiful. They love color photographs. It's kind of turned into like the glamour of the dog world, I think. But I was their training writer, wrote for them for several years. That's where I experienced the fun social media attacks for the first time, as if you're out there as a female or just out there in the world, but particularly as female, I got my alligator skin from that. So they knew me, and I didn't know that they had a publishing wing. I just never crossed my mind. And the editor said, "Do you want to write a book?" And I said, "Sure." They said, "Let's put all your columns together and that'll be the book." And I'm like, "No, that's easy. Thank you. But that's very boring." So I said, and I did the book proposal. So they knew me. I had a relationship. I don't need an agent.
Yeah.
But I still did the book proposal. I knew I had to because I worked with authors for 10 years. So I knew that was coming. You suck it up and you just do it, and you have to do it well. They accepted it. They sent me a contrast. They sent me an advances. You read about 6-figure advances. No, that's if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger or, a big movie star, or you're the new hot kid on TikTok. They have Book Talk, which is very interesting now, that you don't get that. I was told the average is like $3,000 to $5,000 for mid-level publishing houses. You have to pay that back. It's called an advance. You pay it back through sales. So your book could sell for a year and you still haven't paid your advance back. Usually I paid off the advances, but through sales, but I don't know if they ask for that money back if you don't sell it, but $3,000 to $5,000 is not putting your kid through college or anything else. Anyway, so I didn't have to deal with an agent or publisher, and any of that. But so I wrote the book I wanted to write. And again, Kathy talked about how crucial it was. And it's kind of unusual to control the contents of your book and the dream of your book, because an editor can screw it up. A head honcho can say, "I don't want that in that chapter," and it's your whole life story. Because this is kind of half memoir, half reactivity, dogs and how to have reactive dogs. And it's kind of strange. Like I wrote it because I didn't see many trainers talking about their personal stuff. And that's why I became a trainer, because of what I experienced as somebody in rescue. But what I didn't expect is the photographs in this, like it's like their magazines.
They're amazing. Beautiful.
And this book would be a heck of a lot thinner, by the way, without all these incredible photographs. I didn't have to pay a dime for this. And they used a lot of my own photographs and worked with me, which is also important because my own dogs are in there. My client dogs are in there. They published it. They were going to really market it, but I still didn't trust it because of that they were going to do it. And even though they had they had funding for once as a publisher. So I created an entire written plan. You have to start with long lead times with magazines that are what you're reading now in a magazine was placed 6 months to a year ago. So I wrote press releases. My first interview, which is a little bit of history for this group, was with Denise O'Moore. And she had sent me something. We weren't Facebook friends, and we went to that other folder. And I never saw it for like 2 or 3 months. And so she was doing book interviews and she said, "Would you be willing?" And I said, "Sure." And there was no video. We were typing questions back and forth. That's how long ago this was. Right. So I promoted it. Trainers luckily picked it up. I wrote it for owners and sold it with their classes and stuff like that. It kind of developed an underground cult status. I never really stopped promoting it until I semi-retired for 5 years. And then I was gone, but it kept selling. It's only 7 years, which is hard to do and remarkable.
Yes.
3 trainings, which it's hard to do. And I didn't know that there was 3. I thought there was really only one big one. And I knew there was probably 2. And I've been giving away my first editions for a long time because I squirreled some away. I don't do that anymore. I give away the second, third edition. So that's hard to do. But again, I lost control. because another dogster stopped publishing their books. They sold their high volume books, and I was one of them. Different publishers bought different books. Fox Chapel bought mine, a publisher out of Pennsylvania. I don't know anyone there. I didn't know anyone there. They continued to publish it. We hardly ever talked for 7 or 8 years. I thank God they continued to publish it. Then the acquisition editor 2 years ago now, maybe 3, contacted me. It was during COVID, out of the blue, and said, "We want you to write a second edition of the Midnight Dog Walkers." I said, "Okay." And they said, well, I didn't say okay. I was very highly suspicious because I know how much work it is. I said, what do you mean a second edition? Will it have the same name? Because the Midnight Dog Walkers is distinctive if you have a reactive dog. And the acquisition editor was not a dog person. She goes, "Nobody knows what a Midnight Dog Walker is." And I go, "You don't have a dog. You don't have a reactive dog, or you would know what that means, because it's self-explanatory." But she's right. From a selling position, the average person does not know what the hell that means.
Right.
Then she said, "You have too much memoir. We want steps how-to." They're a how-to publisher. They have a few books and a couple of bestsellers in the dog category, but they're mostly woodworking and needlepoint. So my book just kind of ended up because they bought it. And I said, they said it's 80% Midnight Dog Walkers and 20% new. It will take you no time. You could just do that in a month. Lies, all lies. In part because I refused to just regurgitate the book because I didn't want out there, and it was still selling. So like, why do a second? And then it won't have the same name, it won't have the same cover, but it's supposed to be 80% second edition. They consider this a second edition, which is quite clever in many ways. So about a year before it was published, they said, "We're not going to reprint Midnight Dog Walkers." I said, "Why not? It's still popular. So you can now only get it on Kindle." I tried to buy it. I would love to buy it. Legal, I'm not going to pay a lawyer for that. It's a losing battle. It doesn't sell enough. If it was 10,000 copies a year, sure, it's probably 1,000 to 2,000, which is still better than most books.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
So I didn't have a choice, and that I didn't have a choice of the title. If I was going to do it, I could have said no, and I almost said no because I knew how much work it was going to be. And I also knew in the back of my mind, I'm going to write a new book. I just am not going to do. There's no point in going through all of this just to get the second edition out. They didn't know that. That I was going to do that.
Right.
And really, Denise Moore, once again, I talked to her and my husband, and I'm like, this is too hard. I don't want to do it. I'm going to tear it up. And Jeff's like, yeah, tear it up, because I was retired. He's also very supportive. And I had retired from really the industry for a long ways. I'm going to quit talking in a minute because we need to answer some questions. But I'm very glad I wrote the book. It changed my life. It changed my attitude towards the industry. And it was because of the colleagues. I included 17 interviews with top people around the world. And some are known and some are not.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
You've had a sneak peek. And
Yeah,
also,
I got a sneak peek. So yeah, I'm really excited. I ordered it last year when we thought it was coming out in July. So
yes, it's been a long time coming. But again, like Kathy said, they stayed true to what I wanted to write. And I had arguments with the editor, because not the acquisitions editor. She came from a bigger New York publishing house, and she's got that New York tough attitude, which I love. And I held my ground, and I was willing to walk away several times. Like I'll just walk, because I didn't want to do it in the first place because it's too much work. And part of it was they wanted step-by-step with reactivity. This is really insider baseball, but they wanted step-by-step reactivity. I said, that's not how it works with reactivity. A dog is not, they're not all the same. Health issues, age issues, environment issues, genetic issues. And so we compromised. And so some of the basic skills, step by step, that's what they love, step by step. And maybe owners love step by step.
I know, but I don't mean to interrupt your flow. You're an awesome flow. I love hearing this, but I really fight against that too. I don't think dogs are step by step, nor are people, nor our environments, nor our family, nor our days. And so people are wrong. Sometimes people want the wrong thing. And this is really the hardest thing about writing, is that people think they want step by step, or they think they want the answer to whatever, they really need something else. And so the big question is, how do we give them what they really need when they think they want X, and they want to buy the thing that has steps, but what they really want is this, because if they got this, what you really want to give them, that's really going to solve their problem. The step by step is going to confuse them, because they're going to start doing step by step, but it doesn't work for them because they really, they need a whole different thing.
Yeah,
That's
that's so true. You know, there's in my book, the first half of it really is laying the groundwork for the training that comes, all the training behavior concepts. And I had one advanced reader say, you need to take all of that out. It's like, can't take that out. That's the foundation
no,
for everything else.
none of that other stuff will work if they don't do
Yeah.
the boring
Yeah.
stuff up front. But that is just the way of it. So all of you writers out there, that is a big problem, whether you're trying to root what for a magazine or a book or whatever, is that for dogs, you want to do all this stuff first, this background, this basic stuff, and all the 1, 2, 3s later are not going to work until you do the other stuff first. Anyway, Andy, go ahead. I want to hear how you landed. Like, so
Well, that's the author's voice, and that's, you either stand up for your own voice or you don't. But the more history you have with the publisher, like they did like the sales of the Midnight Dog Walkers, and I'm 60 at most, and at 60 we care less about the things we cared about at 30 and image and all of that. So I was perfectly willing, and I think they felt that. But I did it politely, and I'm very good terms with the publisher, even though it was a year late. And some things were under their control and some things were not under their control. And that is important to me because they own the rights to the next book, and I want them to be happy with the book. I want them to want to promote the book. And they also understood that I had the publicity background. And so I kind of did a lot of the marketing, and they worked with me. They have an in-house publicist. She's amazing. A different in-house publicist might have been like, who are you? I don't know who you are. Don't tell me how to do my job. She let me be involved in the press release and all the marketing and everything. Like, this book has me top down for the marketing.
That's
and it's
wonderful.
been on the bestseller list for a year. So it's like they can't complain. I don't even know of any book that's been on a bestseller list for a year that's not from a movie.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so basically, I agreed to write the book at the very last minute. I was really about not to do it. But I knew that I was going to fight for what I felt was important, and I would have to give some too, because they are paying for this thing to be done. And I wrote it for 6 months. It's a long story about how I stopped in the first month because I asked myself, as a trained journalist, I've been a journalist since I was 15, who, what, where, when, and why. What is new since I removed myself from the industry? How are they treating dogs, reactive dogs, differently? Why are dogs so troubled? Because everyone I interviewed said dogs are more troubled and more incredibly difficult ways than they were 10 years ago. A different genetic pool. There's reasons for that. What was phenomenal for me is that everyone I asked said yes immediately. Nobody said who else is in the book. Like, is there a big enough name? Nobody asked for money for their time, and it took some time to do the interviews because publisher wasn't paying for that. I couldn't pay for that. So I think it's a unique book because of those interviews. In large part, it's really not so much memoir anymore. They didn't want that, which is fine. I agree. You know, this is more of a more.
But I do love, there are some of your stories and some of your journey in there, which I think just adds richness to things that you're talking about in the book.
Yeah, and I think I just snuck it. What ended up happening is that they didn't really pay close attention to what I was doing. So I was interviewing, they agreed, you have to get stuff agreed, to that's outside of the contract. And I had to do the 30-page freaking proposal, even though they came to me, I still had to do it. And then I had to get the table of contents approved. And with a publisher, once that's approved, you can't really go, oh, I'm going to do these other 10 things that needs to be certain. Go ahead, Lisa.
No, it's just keep going. There's one thing I'm going to talk about that's in my book that I was adamant about, but that I think is probably in traditionally published books automatically. I don't know that, but
yeah, well, we agreed on that. And so the good thing and the bad thing is they're not dog people. They're not Dogster. At least the Dogster people knew dogs inside and out to some degree. They are different, but they're publishers and they're very good at it. They publish a ton of books every year. I'd say a mid-level publisher. So they kind of ignored me, even though I had writing deadlines. I love writing deadlines because it keeps, and I've done it since I was 15. I cannot write without a deadline, and I'll just do it the next day. I met all the deadlines. I assumed that the editor was reading them. I didn't hear anything, and I turned it in January 31st. I'm so proud I met the deadline. I mean, I asked some questions and they would get back to me really quickly, but I don't think anyone read it for 3 months because they had other books.
God.
Well,
that could be great, because that means you're like, well, too bad. You could have told me earlier, but this is the book I wrote.
They were shocked because it was a whole new book. I'd say there's one chapter that's in the Midnight Dog Walkers, and that's about behavior euthanasia of my own dog. They were stunned. But I'm
Wow.
like, I met your deadlines. I know what a deadline is. I know what your contract says. I did it. Here you go. And they luckily loved it.
Okay.
Read a little bit on the how-to and the steps,
Yeah.
but we reached a compromise, and that may not happen. The book could have not ever happened. I could have gotten mad. They could have gotten mad. I could have had to pay back the advance. And it was dicey a little bit, but we were all professional. That's why I love this publisher. They assigned me a wonderful editor. She got all my edits in, and this was hard because there were so many people we had to send it out once it was formatted to get there. There was a lot of moving parts to this book. It is coming out July. There's more in my course about it. But I never expected, and I'll say this, and then we'll go back to Lisa, and then we'll ask questions because we're get the questions because we're an hour in. I never expected my own nonfiction book to change my life. I mean, I thought this is my last hurrah. I'm going to retire for good. This is for dog owners because there aren't enough positive reinforcement trainers, particularly working with behavior issues. And this is your first step, and try it yourself. And here's some ways to maybe not screw up your dog and to help your dog get better. But I was so moved by my colleagues, and because of COVID, I've talked to more trainers in the last 2 years than I have in 25 years. And I've
Wow.
got to know many people and consider them friends now that I didn't know before. We knew of each other, but we didn't, and that people having your back in this industry and understanding where you've been and what you've gone through is enormously healing for me. That's why I started the Phenix Advocacy Center. So you never know what this journey is going to do for you. And even if you're not a bestseller, it's not all about that by any stretch. It's about passion and what you love to do and helping other people. All of our books are about helping dogs fundamentally, but then helping people who love the dogs. So that's my spiel. Go ahead, Lisa. You were going to say something about
It's true. My book hadn't been out but a couple of weeks when I got a Facebook message for someone I didn't know who had received the book as a gift and said, my dog, I took him out for a walk last night. My dog came out of his harness. I didn't hook his harness. He was running loose. I called and he came back. And she'd only had the book 2 weeks. It's like, how did you, that's why we write the books, right? That's how we write the books. So the very first dog training book I read in 2003, it would have been, was on learning theory. It didn't have an index in it. I knew nothing about learning theory. It boggled my mind to have to find something in the book when there wasn't an index. So when I wrote Rocket Recall, I will absolutely positively have an index. I didn't know that process of an index. There are professional indexers. I found the American Society of Professional Indexers, interviewed different indexers. So then once the book manuscript was done, you send it to the indexer who then does that additional work. So yeah, but I have an index, so you can look something up.
My publisher asked me to write the index. I said, no, I'm not qualified. And they actually,
I wrote the glossary, but which was hard enough. I couldn't, there's indexing software, but again, I didn't want to learn that.
And I've heard from self-published people who do send it out and it wasn't the right person and they spent the money. And there are a lot of scammers on the self-published side. And the traditional publishing too. Like if an agent ever asks you to pay to read their book, that's a red flag. They're just not going to talk. They're going to tell you no and to F off. They're not going to read your book.
I just found the most amazing guy. He was new, he had dogs, loved dogs. His family had Australian Shepherds. I mean, we just gelled from the very beginning, and he was awesome, very reasonable, a little lower cost than the kind of average cost for an indexer. I think average cost for an indexer is $6 to $10 a page. Anyway, he was, I think, below that. But he was quick. I was kind of behind my timeline, or at least I felt that I was. It was my own timeline. But he turned it around in about a week and a half, which is great.
Any book, it's a group. Like we say, it's a solitary thing, and it is in some ways. The writing part, but that's it. And then it's probably 10 to 20 to 30 people that are in just one book that are involved on the back end. It's pretty insane. So let's go to, we have mostly comments, I think. Diane Garrod, who is also an author, says that that's the one thing, cost, but promotion should recover those and gain a profit. Depending on the cost of the book. Like if Lisa had put color photos in, and even though it was on the bestseller list several times on Amazon, I don't know that that would sell enough to pay for we're having a windstorm, enough for the, welcome to spring in Utah, for the, all the thousands of dollars, and it is thousands of dollars that go into it, is self-publishing. And in one nice thing, and I say this in my course, is if you have a book contract, my accountant, who's an excellent accountant, told me that year on your taxes that you're writing the book, like when I did the Midnight Dog Walkers, that I had a book contract, I purposely flew to Philadelphia and interviewed Karen Overall because she was an idol of mine and a hero. And I could write that off on my taxes. So that's one thing. And self-publishing, you probably would need more of a astute CPA to figure out what all, but because you don't really have a contract, but it is a project and you can write off.
Yeah, it is a business related expense. So
you can write off a lot.
But so are the profits that, any profits that come in, as well.
This sounds great. This sounds great about a writers group. People really like that. Leah Sutherland, this is a great discussion. I would love to see authors show more support for independent booksellers. That is very true. Very, very true. Laura.
Yeah, which is why Lee, I don't think I mentioned it. Maybe I did at the beginning, why I published through Ingram Spark. So my local booksellers here, my books have been on consignment, but they can't order my book because they order those through Ingram Spark publisher, not at Amazon. So I just hit click on distribution today, though I was looking for some things today, found my ebook on a Barnes & Noble site. I don't know how it got there.
Yeah. Somebody at Barnes & Noble purchased it. And one thing about distribution, that's the other reason I chose to try to get traditionally published, is because when I had my publicity firm in Austin many, many years ago, I refused to get involved with distribution. Like we had to learn it. But this was way before, there goes my crew, way before Amazon was in existence. That's how old I am. But distribution was a nightmare. And so only 2 or 3 companies controlled all of the distribution, and you had to pay money, big bucks, and they were not talking, and they still don't want to in brick and mortar stores put self-published books in there because they buy in bulk and they buy a year in advance. Like my book was sold last year to these bookstores. But short story. So my company is called Phenix and Phenix Literary Publicist, and that's where I got to know Marika, who will be here next week. I sold it to a guy who was our salesperson, and I said to him, his name was Mike, do not get into publishing. Do not physically publish books. There is no money in it. The margins are razor thin. It will kill you. Do not only do publicity. There's a lot of money in publicity. I was very well paid as a publicist, and then you become a dog trainer, but that's a different story. Anyway, he bankrupted it within 2 to 3 years because he got into publishing.
Wow.
It is very razor thin. Like we can get mad at publishers that they're doing this and they're cheap and they're not.
No, but they aren't.
They're not making money. Here's Laura Nativo. This is also helpful. Any suggestions on hiring a co-writer or ghostwriter? I love talking. I have stories. I have audience and easy ways to TV. She does have a platform because she's been a TV person. I don't have the time or focus to sit still and write. Would love any thoughts on teaming up with another dog trainer who loves writing.
And I also have a wonderful, one of my first online memoir writing courses was taught by a woman by the name of Eva Shaw, evashaw.com. Wonderful course. I've taken several online courses from her through ed2go, ed2go.com. She's a ghostwriter and not a dog trainer, but she's dog savvy. So she could be something that, if you want a ghostwriter, you can certainly look at her. She knows about my memoir that I'm writing, and that if something should happen to me before I'm finished writing the book, Brad knows and she knows that my manuscript will go to her and she'll finish the book. That's how important this next book is to me.
Yeah. My memoir, I still have. It's 100,000 words, and I've been working on it for a decade. And I just set it aside and set it aside, set it aside.
You have to. It's hard work. I mean, everybody needs a therapist in general, but boy, when you're writing a memoir, you definitely need hotlines to a therapist.
It is. It is therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, so Mungo's, which is in Canada, that's an independent bookstore. Erica, what do you think about self-publishing? Apologies if you've already answered this. The first half of this was talking about Lisa's book, which is self-publishing. So Erica, when you have time, go back to watch that because there are pros and cons of either.
And because I had I enjoyed the process managing all the projects myself. I like project management and it was fun. Because it was such a positive experience for me, it's going to be hard for me to think about not self-publishing the next time, though BookLogix, who's the a la carte independent publisher, I'll probably tap them to help me.
Yeah, and see, my brain doesn't work that way. I just can't deal with all the moving parts. I get frustrated too quickly. I don't read directions very well. I just blunder through stuff. So I was somebody who needed a publisher to, you take care of that and just tell me when we're done. Marika weighed in. She's glad she stumbled upon this, and she is going to be here next week to talk about marketing. Really, really important.
Look forward to that. I can't be live, but I will watch the recording.
Like we said, no matter who your publisher is, you're responsible for marketing. End of the story. Marika says we were faxing press releases in 1997. Shay Kelly, do you feel that it's difficult to promote your own book without sounding like you are always going on and on about it and annoying people?
Yes.
You know what?
When you talk about it, maybe this particular mine, mine are these heartwarming little stories, and so if I start telling them again, there's a freshness that goes away. I don't know, it's hard to feel super genuine. For example, when you're going on podcast after podcast, talking about it, and it's a conversational kind of thing like this is, and someone asks you a question, what was your favorite puppy ever? And you want that answer to be fresh, but you just gave that answer. How can it feel fresh again? So in answer to Shay Kelly's thing, that's what's difficult for me, is trying to keep that feeling fresh without actually changing the information. And you don't want to change the information because you have a right answer to that. So anyway, I think that's difficult.
And Marika and I did media training for our authors. And one thing we would tell them is to have 1 to 3 things. If on TV, one thing, because TV interviews are so fast, and don't go on TV unless you are ready for TV. You can just skip TV, although more people get their news from TV than almost any other source. Now it's social media. Don't even go on a podcast, a live thing like this, if you don't feel comfortable doing that. You can practice and work your way up to that and do print primarily. But we would tell people to be prepared for any interview. The dog says, wind this up, ladies.
You're just like, hey, I've been separated from you for too long.
Is to have 1 or 2 main points, and you will get tired of discussing it. It's like when my book comes out a year and a half, 2 or 3 years now into this, I'm like, I'm so tired of this. I didn't want to read. I hated the edits because a year later, I'm like, this again. I wrote this. I said that. I wrote that. Oh my God, I can't. I don't want to see my book again. I'm done with the interior, but it is new to everybody else. Well, not mine, because we've been talking about it for so long, but I think that it takes some confidence and knowing that your book is a work of passion and that you wrote it to help people is completely different than vanity press. Look at me, I'm the best, whatever, in the entire world. So I just to answer Shay's question, I think if you start with an open heart and being honest that I didn't write this to get rich, because none of us are.
I think that's right. Try to remember that you really are trying to get this nugget that is so important to you across to a new audience. And so if you can,
Shay's book enrichment is amazing.
Oh, great. It is. It's such a great.
There's a new one coming out on puppies. And we're going
great.
He's a wonderful, wonderful puppy named Monty. Erica, thank you. The Midnight Dog Walkers irrevocably changed my life. And people are saying nice things. Marika says I've retired 5 times, which is very true. KDP Anderson, Amazon charge a fortune for color. It's changed if the whole book is in color, even if you only have 1 color photo.
Yes, true.
Oh, Marika knows a ghostwriter. Laura Nativo, you can trust Marika. From Mike's, Jackie Pritchard, from my experience, be careful with co-authoring. That is very true. There's so many places along the way where you can lose control over the project. And again, in my course, I basically recommend self-publishing because of the length of delays and how difficult it is to get traditionally published. You could be waiting for 5 years to get an agent, and rejection after rejection when you could just get the book out there. Very, very it can't happen infrequently, like that wonderfully written book, 50 Shades of Grey, which I never read, which apparently is horribly written. And she's a multi-millionaire. That was fan fiction based on vampire or something. I don't know. But she's self-published, I believe. I may have that wrong, but there have been cases in book lore where you self-publish and it sells so much that that's your platform. Then you can take that. But again, it has to be marketing. Diane Garrod, if you can have an ebook, an audio version, and it is applicable on online course, on the book, podcast. Where'd it go? As mentioned, a group established before the book comes out and give talks. Yes, you can definitely do things off launching off your
Yes.
book for sure.
I've got a question myself.
I think we
I just lost it.
oh no.
Swear to God, what did Diane say? Oh, something that it came from one of Diane's questions.
Audio webinars.
Oh, audio. Thank you. Audio. I've had several people tell me that I should do an audio book, and I'm not sure how because it's an instructional book, though there's lots of my stories about, my life with my dogs and how that relates to what I'm sharing. Anyway, I'm going to explore that because I've been asked so many times. And I found a small company in Asheville, North Carolina, who does that work. So I'm going to be reaching out to them soon.
I'd like to know, because my publisher doesn't do audiobooks and I'm asked all the time. And I think if you're a publisher, it's just expensive, like everything else. They kind of have an obligation to do an audiobook because a lot of people can't read.
So I'll keep you informed, Annie. I'm going to start to make a couple of calls. So
yeah,
I'm waiting to hear in my puppy book that I'm just wrapping up the contract for this week. I'm waiting to hear what they're going to say about audio, because I think audio is important for this audience. I think especially, if I have different chapters dealing with different things, that's perfect for your dog walk, that little half an hour to listen. So, but yeah, I don't know how that works. I don't know if they're going to offer that or not, because it's an expense to them.
With the contract that you really, if you haven't signed a book writing contract, I would advise an attorney, because you never know. Like, I can't buy the rights to the Midnight Dog Walkers. If I had thought about that 10 years ago, I might have put a stipulation in that if, whatever. So let's wrap this up. I think this is a very fascinating conversation. We could talk about this all day long. Tell us what you're working on and what book-wise. We've talked about it a little, but let's just wrap up with what you have coming up.
Kathy, you've got one just about to closer than any of us have, I think.
I'm very excited. So my last book was just about fostering. It was just happy stories. This one is about how to raise your puppy with empathy. It is, I wrote a piece for Whole Dog Journal called, talking about your kidnapped puppy, that we've kidnapped our puppies from Planet Dog. And that the point of it is to get your head in the space that stop thinking that this dog thinks it's normal to come into our little human world, and then, stop doing all the puppy stuff. And so the book talks about how the fastest way to get what you really want is to stop thinking about what you really want and start thinking about who your puppy really is. Once you think about the fact that your puppy, we've taken him from his own culture and we've stuck him in our little human world, how do we meet him where he is in order to then pull him along back with us?
That's
so
wonderful.
It's chapter after chapter about all the traditional things. What do you do about the mouthing? What do you do about biting? What do you do about potty training? But from the orientation that, remember, we kidnapped him from Planet Dog. And so keep your head in the right space, and that will help you get what you want in the end. But first, start with empathy. So that's what the book's about. I'm excited. I love it. It's almost done.
You have a pub date or an imaginary pub date?
I think it's going to be a year from now. I think it's going to be spring 2024. But we'll see. And as you know, those things could change. So we'll see.
We'll have you back on when it comes out.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What are you working on? Your memoir?
I have my work in progress is I think this will be the title. Until a book is really finished, you're not quite sure what the title will be, but it's The Death of a Dog Changes You. And I wrote a blog post a couple of years ago. So we have a blog post that, on our website where you could read a little bit about that. But Brad went running through the house. It's my life has changed dramatically. I'm going to go on mute for a second. Aliens out front, no doubt.
We don't even hear barking.
No, you don't hear it? Okay, great. My life has changed. I mean, the death of the dog is what propelled me into dog training. And but for the lives and deaths of my dogs, I wouldn't be who I am today in many other ways other than just dog training. So that's my next work. I hope 2024, end of 2024, it'll be done. And then I have The Whippersnapper and the Sage, which is a book about bringing puppies into a senior dog's home and helping that senior dog and puppy develop a relationship, because people expect it to be immediate. And there are so many things to think about to make sure that relationship gets nurtured, and you keep things moving slowly so each dog has the time to acclimate. It took us 4 months to assimilate Cody into our house with other cats. So I have some things to share. And because I, talk about the whippersnapper and the sage in our house, I decided to name it that.
Nice. Love it.
I
Love it.
love that title. That's something I would remember out of all the titles. I
agree. I agree.
I don't really have another, but my publisher has the rights to one more. I did write
Whatever it is.
In the meantime, I wrote a novel, which I really like the novel, but again, sending out because they don't publish fiction. They still wanted to see it, my publisher, but I realized since they have the rights to 2 more books, it was kind of clever of me, and I hope they're not listening, and I don't think they are, that I sent them a book of fiction, and they said, sorry, we're not interested. So now they have the right to one more book, which is fine. I would publish another book with them any day. It's been a phenomenal process in spite of the delays. So I have that, and I am thinking about a 3rd book, and part of it may be, and we were talking about this before we came on, is the process of aging and loving dogs and bigger dogs, because we've all had big dogs. Just that whole process, because most of my clients have always been 40 and up, women 40 and up, because we just have such a phenomenal relationship with our dogs, empty nesters and all of that. So I don't know, I'm considering I probably will do one more, we'll see. But I think I'm moving into fiction, because fiction gives you freedom, so much freedom.
I've written a few pages in writing classes of fiction, and it's been so fun because you make stuff up. It's like, oh my gosh, how fun is that to just create? But the imagination it takes to do that, I'm not sure I have that, but I'm fascinated by people who write fiction. I've met so many local authors in my writing groups, and their writing is excellent. Unlike, some of what you've experienced, I've been blown away by some local folks who are writing some amazing fiction.
Yeah, and Amazon gives that a voice. I mean, you can sell 1,000 copies a year on your own. And ebooks are very popular on websites as well. Well, thank you both so much. This has been fascinating. I'm so glad your books are out there, and I'm glad that you're continuing to write. And I look forward to them. And of course, you're always going to come back here and talk on the Midnight Dog Walkers. We're going to list a bunch of resources and discounts. And I think Kathy was going to do an ebook giveaway. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'll do an ebook giveaway, book logic
or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know how to do that, except if you guys just want to randomly pick a commenter and give an ebook.
Yeah, why don't I, because I can't see any comments, why don't I just say the 14th comment?
Okay.
For my ebook.
Do you want to
14 is a family good luck number, so 14.
So I don't have an ebook, and because I'm not self-published, I don't have it, but I could send you a signed copy.
If you want to do that, and when we do actual books versus ebooks, we ask the person who wins to pay the postage, because they could be overseas. It could be $30 just to put overseas. So if you want to just pick a number, or if you want to go through the comments afterwards, whatever you would like to do.
I wish I could pick who might be interested. I don't know who might be interested of all those comments.
And people can comment if you want a signed copy of Kathy's book.
So if you're interested, put right in there, and then I'll randomly pick somebody to send it to.
And by the way, we don't get many free books from our publisher at all. We end up buying them.
I buy my own book.
Yeah, and we same here.
Well, thank you guys so much. This is very important. Like I said, I am on a
Thank
super.
you, Kathy.
Thanks for
And
having
thank
us.
you, Annie. It's just a pleasure. And all of you out there who are listening, if you have an idea and you think you want to write about it, do it.
Yep.
Do it.
Even through all we've been through, we still are here to say, do it. It can be healing for you, even though it's a
Absolutely.
nonfiction book.
Look at the people we've met because we've written a book. I wouldn't know Annie. I wouldn't know Kathy, but for this and so many other people. So it's life change, just like each of you, dog training has changed your life in some way by your circle of people and friends. And it happens when you write a book as well.
And I am on a subversive mission to get as many R+ books out there as I possibly can. So, and give reviews. Go out there and buy
Yes.
buy the ebooks if you want to, and give reviews. Very important. So
And
thank
I understand, Annie, maybe you know it. If you post a picture with your review, that somehow affects the algorithms in a positive way.
I didn't know that. That's
Oh, I
and
didn't
you
know that.
guys next week for Marika Flat, but publicity, because that's the other part that is
Right.
it's in your hands. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks for everybody that showed up. We're getting lots of hearts, and I hope you both will go look at the comments and comment if you'd like. And then stay tuned. When we're done with this, I'll put in all the discounts because we have some
Great.
really discounts. So
All
thank
right,
you.
thanks. This was
Thanks,
fun.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.